Welcome, everyone, to Sunday Live, spiritual direction and self care every Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm so glad that you are here with us, either on the broadcast or on the replay. And I'm really excited to dive into the material today. As always, we, like I said, gather every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And right now we're going through a journey called Crossing the desert, crossing the desert. This is part 6. It's the season of Lent if you follow along with the church calendar. And today is also known as Palm Sunday in the season of Lent. We're going to be talking about that a little bit more in a bit. I'm really glad that you're with us today. Let me know how you are doing, and invite and tell me where you are today. Here again, it is a beautiful, beautiful day. Melissa is asking, how do you invite someone to join in? You can either have them join on the Facebook page. They would have to join the Facebook group, or let me send you, I'll put the YouTube link in, and they can go watch it live on the YouTube link for us right now. Let me double check here. I'll see if I can find it. Here's the link, and I'll put it in here. They can go to the YouTube channel and click on the live link, and they can join from there. Sound good? Mark says that he's having a beautiful day. I see her friend is trying to join. I will go in and add her, and then she can watch it on the live as well. I love this live situation here where people are joining again and growing our community. This is awesome. She is approved and she is in on this beautiful Palm Sunday. How great is that? Welcome to our new member. Everyone say hi in the chat if you want. I believe, does she go by Mary? Let us know that you're here and say hello. Thanks for inviting her, Melissa. So what a great way to start our broadcast today. This is awesome. So let us know where you are, how you're doing this week, and we're going to get ready to dive in to the material for this last Sunday in Lent, this last week in Lent. It's the start of what in the Christian tradition is called Holy Week, where we remember the last days of Jesus. There's Jill. Give a wave, coming on in. And we, throughout this week, really can reflect on kind of, I think it's a story. It's a week of stories and a week of an experience that kind of like really becomes kind of a symbol of a parable of, if you will, the human experience itself. And we get to see what matters most and what Jesus represents as a human being, and what is emphasized there in the humanity of Jesus and how he faces difficulty and then overcomes. So I'm really excited. If you are a practicing Christian, we have lots of different people who are part of Spiritual Direction and Soul Care. So if Christianity is kind of your religious outlook and posture, I know this is an important week to you. And so blessings to you as you go through this week. And for all of us, regardless of our kind of outlook or posture, all of us have something to learn from the deep wisdom in the stories of Jesus in this season. So let's get ready to kind of dive in and look at the story today. And let's just begin with a moment of grounding. Let's begin with a moment of our basic spiritual practices of breath and giving ourselves the gift of stillness briefly as we open ourselves and open our hearts and our minds to reflect, to think, to ponder, to look deeply and see deeply and clearly who we are. So let's do that now as we just do a moment of grounding, breath, and stillness together as we breathe. And in again, and out. Let your shoulders drop and be comfortable. At the end of our time today, we will be doing a guided meditation again, a sitting meditation. So you're in the perfect posture. This is kind of like a prequel. We'll just do some quick breathing. Release the week. Take in breath, our life, and release the coming week. Breathe in. Release our thoughts that are racing. And just give ourselves a moment of stillness. All right. So today is Palm Sunday. Some people call it Passion Sunday. You hear a story, and we'll hear this story about Jesus entering the city of Jerusalem, being greeted by people who are waving palms, welcoming him. If you're familiar with the story of Jesus' passion, some churches today will read the Passion narrative, which is the story of the Last Supper and Jesus' betrayal. Sometimes they jump ahead to that instead of observing Good Friday. Both of these stories are very powerful, but today we're going to be looking at, on this Palm and Passion Sunday, we're going to be looking primarily at the story of Palm Sunday. And it comes from the Gospel of Luke, Luke 19. And I'm just going to read it to you, and then we'll reflect and talk a little bit together today. So Luke 19, 28 through 48 says, "After he had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. And when he came near to Bethphage and Bethany, 2 cities, at the place called the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of his disciples, saying, 'Go into the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find tied there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it here. And if anyone asks you, why are you untying it, just say, the Lord needs it.' So those who were sent departed and found it, as he had told them. And as they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, 'Why are you untying the colt?' And they said, 'The Lord needs it.' Then they brought it to Jesus, and after throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it. As he rode along, people kept spreading their cloaks on the road. As he was now approaching the path down from the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of the disciples began to praise God joyfully with a loud voice for all the deeds of power they had seen, saying, 'Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven.' Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, 'Teacher, order your disciples to stop.' And he answered, 'I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shout out.'" It's an amazing story. It's interesting. And it's interesting that so many of us focus only on this part of the story on this day. Partly because we, as humans, try to emphasize the stuff that we like, the stuff that helps us feel more powerful, right? And we don't have much use for reality many times and the complicated ways life and people work. What's interesting is after Jesus comes into the city, he ends up, as we know, as if you're familiar with the story of this week, he ends up being a really big disappointment. He doesn't show up the way everybody on Palm Sunday is expecting him to show up. He doesn't overthrow an oppressive system of the Roman Empire occupying the country. He doesn't set things right in the cultural and religious life of his people. And that's why everybody's excited when he's coming into the city, because they think all these great things that he has done that they're celebrating are just signs that he's going to deliver in a way that they always expected, but he never actually promised, that he never said that he was about. They were only seeing what they wanted to see because that's what benefited them. And so we know later, um, later they all abandon him, right? Later, even some of them work to see him destroyed. It's fascinating what we do with disappointment. And it's fascinating what we do when we set ourselves up for disappointment because we have a set of assumptions or expectations about life, a person, a situation. We have a lot of assumptions about what we think we're owed or how things should be. I do this, you do this, right? So it's fascinating to me how in religion, right, especially in the Christian faith, this is the story that gets emphasized on this day. But it's really not the story. It's really not the main thing. And so as I reflected on it more and more, I began to really realize that people either throw you aside, right, or get angry and frustrated or leave you behind, right, when they have mistaken or unrealistic expectations, right? The same crowd that cheers him on this day, right? A lot of those same people are like, forget him later because he's not functioning the way they expect him to, the way they want him to, right? They've put and assumed things about him that isn't what he said he was ever about, right? So it's easy then to just be like, well, then you're out of here because you're no benefit to me. Have you ever seen this in your relationships? Have you ever seen this in your life? Maybe we all do this. We all have ways of doing this, right? I mean, the other thing that you see too is later in the week, the religious leaders and the occupying forces of the Roman Empire conspire together, right, to kill him later, right? Because who he actually is so much deeper than just a simple, quick fix to what everybody else thinks is the issue, right? He's really a direct threat to the very assumptions and structures and system that is holding everyone back. And so the people who have something to actually benefit by maintaining the status quo want to destroy him, right? And all the people who think that the only way to get what they want has to look only like this, and he's not doing that. So then they throw him away. Do you see? Do you see how we do this? It's all rooted in either the impulse to protect and control and stay in control, or it's rooted in setting yourself up for disappointment because you assumed X or you wanted to use this person over here or this situation only to your benefit. It's not rooted in love, right? It's not rooted in the possibility of real healing, right? It's all driven by anxiety. It's all driven by anger. It's all driven by expectations. It's all driven by assumptions. See? This is what is really fascinating about this Sunday to me, right? I used to say things like, we talk so much about how Jesus is king on this day, right? Because we want the image of power, because we feel like if we are part of a system that has an image of power, then we'll be powerful, right? And then we'll be safe, and then we'll be protected, right? But Jesus isn't the king we actually want, because he shows up in a different way. He shows up in humility. He shows up in weakness. He shows up with compassion, right? He's the king we need, right? He's the example we need. He's the pattern and the model that we need, but it's not what we really want, right? Because Jesus remains vulnerable. Jesus remains misunderstood. Jesus remains near to those who he loves. He doesn't come and stand over in power. And that's hard because then that means we're vulnerable, right? A lot of people, that's why on this Sunday, so many churches only read about this story of him coming in and everyone being happy and the images of power and the images of promise, right? But that's a big, it looks faithful, it looks right, it looks like the right way to understand Jesus. But even that is many times in our churches today on this Sunday. That's about using the image and story of Jesus to secure ourselves and to make ourselves feel powerful because Jesus is powerful. And it helps us diminish the reality that like where real transformation and where real lasting change can happen and where real healing happens is when we remain open and vulnerable and tender and humble, right? Even when people misunderstand that, even when people twist that tenderness and humility and vulnerability, right? Because it's not really ultimately, as we walk through transformation and as we walk through this life, it's not really actually about making sure everybody else around us feels good or agrees or approves, right? It's not about getting on their level so that we can be like them and they can be satisfied. No, it's about us remaining truly who we are and not being bitter and not putting on airs or wearing masks, right? And human beings oftentimes are so threatened by vulnerability and honesty, right? That they punish it. Because when someone's honest about their weakness, honest about their vulnerability, honest about their struggles, it just reminds us of our own struggles. And a lot of us who have not come to face with the fact that like, you're weak, like we're all weak, we're all struggling, we're all hurting. And it hurts so much to acknowledge that we hurt that we then punish people who are open about it, right? Because it's so threatening. It's why many times, some of us look for things to criticize. It's why so oftentimes in religion, it's always about pointing the finger and waving your finger at and wagging your finger at somebody. Because it's a big exercise. It's a big exercise that sounds very, at first on the surface, very Jesus-centered, very wise, very good. But it's a big exercise in just avoiding the fact that we're all in pain and there's not really much you can do about it other than go through it. And that we're all vulnerable. And so we're all trying to pretend like we're actually more put together than we are. And we don't want anyone to tell us that that's not really the case, right? We see this in little ways when it's hard for us to receive help, right? When it's hard for us to admit we're struggling because we'd rather have the appearance and the perception of being put together. And when we are open, when we come in humility into the city of our lives like Jesus, ultimately there's going to be people who aren't going to be able to hang with it. They're only good with you so long as you're performing the way that they want you to perform. But that's not how Jesus comes. Jesus comes with his authentic self. He doesn't come on a big war horse. He doesn't come in front of an army. He doesn't come saying, look at me, I'm hot stuff. He just comes simply and humbly. And he does what he knows he needs to do. He doesn't accept the assignments and the agendas and the expectations and the perceptions of other people. He simply stays focused on who he is for the people that he's working and walking in and walking with. So it's amazing. So even the reading for the day, right? It's fascinating how even the assigned reading for the day is also, I think, oftentimes reflective of this impulse that we have to hide, right? To project images of success and being put together and everything being okay. We got some comments here. Mark says, vulnerability and honesty has become the most attractive thing to me about friends and family. There's something so authentic about a Christian who can talk about their brokenness. It allows, me too, to happen. I wish more Christians were comfortable to do this. Yeah, and I wish more people in general were more comfortable to do this, right? Because our whole society is rooted in this idea of performance and managing perceptions and curating your Facebook feed and your Instagram, feed and all this stuff, right? Like if you find yourself like scrolling continually in those spaces, right, you're feeding your soul a set of fake expectations, right? You're seeing everybody else's highlight reel and you feel like you're stuck in your everyday, but it's not real. It's not real. And it teaches us to not be vulnerable, right? And it also might show us that we've become addicted to not technology, but addicted to this dead end way of always having to be in triumphal entry, perfect mode, right? Instead of really realizing that we're all just kind of riding a little funky donkey and getting through life, you know? Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. That's awesome. You know, there's so much. There's so much that we can learn, even in the way that this story gets structured and deployed on a day like this. Let's look again, maybe a little bit at the text here too, you know? It's interesting how like even and you know like even when they are coming in and they're saying, "Yeah, blessed is the one who comes," you know? It's fascinating to me how their opponents are like, "Tell them to shut up," you know? "Tell them to shut up." It's like it just shows the antagonism of competing ways of how we have to, you know, some people think you should show up this way, other people think you should show up that way, you know. And the only way you can show up is the way you are. The only way you can show up is the way you show up. All you can be is yourself. All you can be is yourself. And this is what we see in this maelstrom of weird expectations and competing agendas and compulsive social structures and a whole oppressive system around it. You see, Jesus is this still, small, quiet, humble center, just being himself, always being himself, consistently who he's been over and over and over. And so everybody's frustration with him at the end of the week, the disappointment that his followers have, right? It's kind of it's their own fault because they had a commitment and expectation that he never actually offered. He never actually offered. He's always consistently been himself. And when we because like how we see is what we see, right? How we see is what we see. And so when we get frustrated and disappointed, right? We have to really ask ourselves, is this who this person ever said they were? Because you look at who a person consistently has been, right? And then you see what they are, not based on what we demand and expect or what we're worried about these people over here might think, right? You have to look at the actual person. And when you look honestly at yourself and at others, you have to see who you really are. And and then be that, right? So that's what Jesus is doing. He's always consistently been himself, the person who has been there the way he is from jump, right? That's the person. That's the person. And that's the way through. That's the way through. All the pressure, all the social pressure, all the hurt of people's reaction at you when you don't meet their expectations that you didn't ask for or agree to or anything, right? When people try to destroy or tear you down because your vulnerability and the authenticity of who you are is revealing their own unwillingness to be vulnerable and face themselves, you simply remain yourself like Jesus. That's what Jesus does. He's consistently himself. Because as a human being, he knows he can't be anything else. You just have to be who you are. Right? So as we think today, like so many things come against it. I've described the social interactions of it, all that stuff. But as we think of our own riding through life on our donkey, right? Like a borrowed donkey, I really resonate with this image. So much of life can just feel like I'm trying to get through on a borrowed donkey. It's not always, it doesn't always work. I get where I need to get, but like it's an image, right? It's a vulnerable, broken, honest image, right? So as we go through, as we go through this day and on these things, let's take our cues not from the unexpected, the unrealistic expectations of the crowd. Let's not take our cues from fear about the systems in which we live that we can't really control, that could threaten to harm us, or the what ifs, or any of that. Let's not take our cues from what's going on around us. Let's take our cues from the example that Jesus shows us to remain ourselves, even as we, hobble along, as we go toward our destinies. I love that image. It's a gentle image. It's not about the shouts of the crowd, the exhilaration of praise, right? It's just a humble image, a still, small, calm, humble center in the midst of all the churn of life. I think it's amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, to end our time and to help us kind of get back in touch with ourselves, right? To remember where we are, we're going to do a guided sitting meditation. And what it does is it helps us to experience and see and take note of how strong the noise is around us, the noise of the expectations, the noise of the praise of people, the noise of the criticism of people, the noise of our thoughts that race, that are rooted in unresolved trauma that we have, right? It's a sitting meditation that's a tool to build a skill to get back in touch with ourselves and to understand ourselves, to be aware of the ways that we hear these other voices, and to note those voices and then to lay them aside so that we can just keep moving forward fully ourselves as we are. Right? And so you're probably already sitting watching this, so make sure that you get into a comfortable position, and it will help us cultivate deeper awareness, to understand the difference between the thoughts that we have that have been assigned to us because of other people's expectations and other people's praise and other people's criticism and other people's all those things, to distinguish between those and to simply come to be present with ourselves and to focus there. So it's kind of going deeper with our basic spiritual practices of giving ourselves the gift of stillness and breath. It'll help us detect the ways our attention can wander and get caught back up in these other loud voices, these other things, right? Because when we're able to notice how our attention wanders and gets focused on these external things, this is like just noticing it is a critical component of learning to strengthen our resolve and our self-control, to remain true to ourselves, to remain our self-conception and our understanding of who we are is going to be the main focus of what we're doing and how we're living. This is really, really important. So this is going to be a great short meditation. It's called a sitting meditation. And I'm going to get that rolling here for us. And we'll go through it and then we'll chat a little bit. Okay. So let me switch my sound input, and we're going to move over here to this, and we're going to move here to this, and let's get ready for our sitting meditation.
Sitting meditation. In this meditation, we're going to use our breath as an anchor for our attention. And before we start, it's really important to let go of strivings, of goals, the idea of how we should do it to perform well. Simply allow yourself to do this exercise as you do it. Let go of the idea of good and wrong. Simply see how it goes. Now, first, make sure your posture is right. Sit straight, keep your shoulders relaxed, and keep your head straight. Try to have a posture that signals dignity. And if you want, you may now close your eyes and for a moment just become aware of how you are present in this room, how your body is represented in this room, how your body is connected to a chair or a cushion. Maybe you notice how your feet are touching the floor or make contact with the floor. Simply notice. Or maybe you notice any other kinds of physical sensations. Maybe you feel pain in your back or tension in your shoulders. That's okay. Just simply observe it without attempting to make it go away. Just notice your body as it is present right here, right now. Now let's focus our attention on the breathing. Notice how the air gets in through the nose and how your chest expands when you breathe in. And also notice how it relaxes when you breathe out. You may also notice how your belly moves when you breathe. There's no need to control your breath or modify it. Simply witness it as it naturally occurs. Breathing in and breathing out. Allowing yourself to be present in this moment. And sooner or later, often sooner, you will find yourself distracted. Maybe you get distracted by thoughts or sounds or sensations in your body. That's fine. That's just how your mind works. You can always turn your attention back to the breath and let go of distractions. So breathe in and breathe out. And rather than focusing in a rigid way, let your attention softly rest on the breathing. Don't force yourself. With an open and gentle attitude, just follow your breathing. And every time you find yourself distracted, come back with a gentle attitude. Don't punish yourself. It's okay. It's just how the mind works. Always turn your attention back in a kind way. So breathe in. Notice how the body reacts. And breathe out. So where is your attention now? Is it still focused on the breathing, or is it elsewhere? If you're distracted, maybe you can notice what distracted you. A thought, a sensation, an emotion, sound, and then turn back. And even if you find yourself being distracted a lot of times, remind yourself that you are always the one who can turn your attention back. You have the power to do that. You can decide to, at any time, come back to this present moment simply by focusing on something that is occurring right now in this moment. In this case, your breath. Now, if you want, you may slowly open your eyes again and come back with your attention in this room.
Welcome. Welcome back. How do you feel? I love this meditation because it helps remind us that we don't have to be our thoughts and our feelings. We are just the awareness behind them. In all the swirl and churn of people all around us, we so often forget that no one gets to tell us who we are, that the people around us don't get to tell us who we are. And the thoughts and feelings that we have don't get to tell us who we are. We are still ourselves. Mark says it's a very non-judgmental guided meditation. I like it, right? Because that's the whole key, right? Is to move into non-judgment, right? It's one thing to say I'm not judgmental, but it's a whole nother thing to like live in a space of non-judgment about ourselves, right? Right. To be non-judgmental, to live in non-judgment, that's what these meditations do. They help us return back to our awareness of who we are as we hobble along on our borrowed donkey through life, right? They help us remember that Non-judgment is not just the absence of being critical, right? But it's a full posture of choosing non-judgment, of choosing compassion, of choosing deep and profound self-acceptance. And ultimately that flows out into refusing judgment of others, refusing unkindness, right? Choosing active acceptance. Right? That's what I love about this meditation. It helps us zero back in on what we truly are and what we say we are and our awareness of ourselves. And then it gives us the freedom to be that, to be ourselves. Chris says a great meditation, choosing no judgment, right? And to actively step into non-judgment. And when we are in that space, then we see what's really happening, right? We become more fully ourselves as we become more aware of who we really are. And then we can share that to people. It's like what I've said, I've heard people say, like, without human connection, we don't get to experience ourselves as gift, but we experience ourselves most powerfully as gift when we really are really clear about who we are. And we don't get clear about who we are unless we are actively also saying, I'm not going to pick up the assignments of the expectations and the words and the judgment of the people around me. I'm going to stay focused on knowing myself because I'm the only one who can, and I'm the only one who gets to say who I am, right? And when we stand in that confidence, non-judgment and self-compassion become way easier. It just flows naturally. It helps us accept ourselves, and it helps us really fully embrace our own humanity. Because that's what Jesus is constantly showing us in the Jesus stories, is this one who is fully human, right? The Son of Man, this title that we see in the Christian scriptures, really is best to be translated in modern literature as the human one, right? Jesus is this one who shows us this template of what it means to be fully human and to humanize ourselves, humanize our relationships, humanize our space around us, humanize wherever we are with deep and profound confidence, authenticity, vulnerability, humility, non-judgment, radical acceptance. These are the best ways to live, right? You can't, like in the guided meditation, you can't course correct by punishing yourself. You can't course correct by being angry at oneself or saying you should have known better, shoulda, coulda, whatever. That's not how we transform. We transform through gentle self-acceptance and redirection. That's the beauty of the whole notion of life change, right? Is not about you got to walk through life on your hobbling through the donkey and you really should have, be a good enough person to have a Ferrari, not a borrowed donkey. And you got to zip through life and stay perfect and flashy and beautiful. And that's that. And any error means that you're terrible. It's a zero-sum game. That's not really how human beings work. The beauty of the invitation into transformation that we see embodied by Jesus and invited into by Jesus is really about understanding that as we walk and hobble through life, we sometimes find ourselves in a ditch or losing our way. And all we have to do is simply not punish ourselves, not criticize, not condemn, not blame, but to simply go, oh, I'm off course. Let's step back into non-judgment. Let's step back onto the road. Let's just come back and do our thing. That's what it is, right? And so these meditations oftentimes help us recognize our impulse to do the opposite and to say, oh, I can choose now to not become my thoughts and feelings, but to be an awareness behind it that fully accepts myself and steps into who I really am, right? And that's the pathway into understanding our humanity and valuing our humanity, valuing all that we are, that we bring to the table. There's a writer who said, remember that Jesus napped regularly, got frustrated with religious systems, experienced hunger that turned into anger. He got hangry, right? He occasionally ignored his family's advice, and he happily ran away when people wanted to control him. So much of the criticism that we receive and accept, so much of the criticism that we proactively put in ourselves is about control. That's like such a huge thing. And control is about judgment, and you don't need it. And this writer says Jesus' humanity was part of his godliness, what made him like God. His humanity was part of what made him a sacred presence. And each one of us is that sacred presence. There's a sacred gift of our presence, no matter who we are, no matter where we are. And when we stand in that clearly, right? And we move in humility and tenderness, we flourish there, and it can be seen. Right? Jesus' humanity was part of his godliness, and so is yours. So is your humanity. So is my humanity. Mark says we should meet ourselves where we're at, exactly. And when we do that, that's love. And when you meet a person, and when as a person you do that with someone else, when someone else can meet you where you are, and they not only refrain from judgment, but actively express non-judgment, healing happens, deeper connection happens, real acceptance happens, transformation happens. So on this Palm Sunday, may you, as you hobble through life, whether on foot or on a borrowed donkey, or maybe things are going really great for you right now and you're like in the Ferrari season where you're whipping through life and you're having a good time, whatever it is, may you never forget who you really are. And may you remain humble and tender with all those around you. May you be a force for acceptance and healing compassion. May you be simply like Jesus, who doesn't lose sight of who he really is, even as people all around him have competing expectations, even as people misunderstand and judge him. May you remain as confidently aware of yourself as Jesus did. Spiritual Direction, Soul Care, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. You can always invite friends to join our growing community on Facebook at the Spiritual Direction Soul Care Facebook group. And as always, you can go and check out Spiritual Direction and soulcare.com, learn more about our soul care program, and connect a little bit more with me. I hope you guys have an amazing Holy Week. And I'll be looking to find ways that I can upload today's sitting meditation again, and be on the lookout for some special resources for Easter Sunday. All right? Have a great week, everyone. We love you guys. You are amazing, and it's so wonderful to be together again each week. I love what we're doing and the way we're growing and the way we're changing and the way we're healing, and we can do it together. Nothing can stop it. So love you guys so much. Have a great week.